Most people think the biggest ideas come from fancy offices and expensive boardrooms, but one of the most valuable patents in history was literally written on toilet paper. And that patent? It's worth over $50 billion today. This is the story of a broke carpenter who lost everything, twice, and still managed to build an empire that changed how children play forever. His name was Ole Kirk Christiansen, and what he created became Lego. But here's the thing. Ole didn't set out to make toys. He was just trying to survive. It's 1891 in a tiny village called Filskov in Denmark. Ole Kirk Christiansen is born into a farming family. Nothing special, nothing glamorous. Just another kid in rural Denmark who was expected to work the land and live a quiet life. His family wasn't poor, but they weren't rich either. They had a small farm, some animals, enough to get by. Life in rural Denmark at the end of the 19th century was simple and predictable. You were born, you worked the farm, you got married, you had kids who worked the farm, and that was it. But Ole had other plans, not because he was ambitious or dreaming big, he just liked building things. While other kids were playing in the fields or helping with the animals, Ole was fascinated by how things were put together. He would watch the village carpenter work and just stare for hours. The way wood could be transformed from rough timber into something useful, something beautiful. That fascinated him. By the time he was a teenager, he knew he didn't want to be a farmer. He wanted to work with wood, so he convinced his parents to let him apprentice as a carpenter. Back then, apprenticeships were serious business. You didn't just learn a trade, you basically lived with your master, worked for almost nothing, and spent years learning every tiny detail of the craft. Ole threw himself into it completely. He learned how to select the right wood, how to measure precisely, how to join pieces together so they'd last for generations. He loved the smell of fresh wood, the sound of the saw cutting through timber, the satisfaction of creating something useful with his hands. By 1916, at 25 years old, Ole had saved enough money to buy a small carpentry shop in the village of Billund. Now, Billund back then was nothing, and I mean nothing. A handful of houses, dirt roads, barely on any map. If you blinked while passing through, you'd miss it entirely. But for Ole, it was perfect. He could build furniture, make ladders, construct houses, repair wagons. He was good at it. Really good. His furniture was solid, his measurements were precise, his craftsmanship was something people talked about. Business was steady. He married a woman named Kirstine Sorensen. She was local, practical, and supportive of Ole's ambitions. They had 4 sons together, Johannes, Carl Georg, Gottfried, and Gerhard. Life was simple but good. Ole worked hard. Sometimes 12 or 14 hours a day, provided for his family, and slowly built his reputation as a skilled craftsman in the area. People would come from neighboring villages to have Ole build their furniture or repair their homes. He was becoming known as the man you went to when you wanted quality. The workshop grew. Ole hired a few workers. He bought better tools. He took on bigger projects. By the early 1920s, he wasn't just a carpenter anymore, he was running a successful small business. He employed people from the village, he was contributing to the local economy. Things were looking good, really good. Then 1924 happened. One of Ole's sons, nobody knows exactly which one, was playing with wood shavings near a stove in the workshop. Kids being kids, not thinking about danger, just playing. Nobody noticed until it was too late. A spark caught the shavings. The shop caught fire. Within minutes, flames were everywhere. Wood burns fast, and a carpentry workshop is basically a tinderbox. Ole and his workers tried to save what they could, but it was hopeless. The heat was too intense, the smoke was too thick. All they could do was stand back and watch. The entire workshop burned to the ground. Years of work, tools that Ole had, collected since his apprentice days, materials, finished products waiting to be delivered, customer orders, everything. Gone in a few hours. Most people would have given up right there. Packed up, moved to Copenhagen, found factory work, accepted defeat. But Ole didn't. He stood there looking at the ashes of his workshop, with 4 young sons depending on him and a wife looking to him for answers, and he made a decision. He was going to rebuild. Not just rebuild, but build bigger, better, stronger. He took out loans from anyone who would lend, called in favors from suppliers, reached out to customers who owed him money. He worked day and night, sometimes sleeping in the half-built structure just to save time. He couldn't afford to hire back all his workers at first, so he did a lot of the work himself. His hands were raw, his back ached constantly, but he kept going. By 1925, he had a new workshop. Not just a shop, but a proper building with multiple rooms, better equipment, space for employees. He expanded his business beyond just furniture, started taking on bigger construction projects, houses, barns, commercial buildings, anything people needed. He hired back his workers and then some. Business didn't just recover, it boomed. Ole was making more money than he ever had before. His family was growing. His reputation was even stronger than before because people saw what he'd overcome. For a few years, things were looking up. Really up. Ole was one of the more successful businessmen in Billund. He was respected. His family was comfortable. His sons were healthy. The future looked bright. Then 1929 hit. The Great Depression. The entire global economy collapsed overnight. Banks failed, businesses closed, unemployment skyrocketed. In America, people were jumping out of windows. In Europe, entire industries disappeared. And in Denmark, in Little Billund, everything stopped. People stopped building houses because they couldn't get loans. They stopped buying furniture because they couldn't afford it. They stopped spending money on anything that wasn't absolutely necessary for survival. Ole's orders dried up almost instantly. One month, he had a full workshop with projects lined up for months. The next month, he had nothing, no customers, no income, just debt and operating costs, and workers he couldn't afford to pay. He had to let most of his workers go. These were men he'd known for years, men with families of their own, and he had to look them in the eye and tell them there was no work. Some of them cried, some got angry. All of them understood it wasn't personal, it was just the economy. But understanding didn't pay their bills. Ole tried everything to keep the business alive. He lowered his prices, he offered payment plans, he took on smaller jobs he normally wouldn't bother with, he fixed fences, repaired doors, built chicken coops. Anything to bring in a few kroner. But it wasn't enough. The debt kept growing. The bills kept coming. The pressure was crushing. And then, as if things couldn't get worse, his wife Kirstine died in 1932. She'd been sick for a while, but they couldn't afford good medical care. Ole was left alone with 4 young boys to raise. The youngest was only 7 years old, and a failing business that was drowning in debt. He was 41 years old and had lost almost everything. Again, this is where most stories would end. Bankruptcy. Closure. Move on. Find a job working for someone else. Accept that you tried and failed. But Ole noticed something during this darkest period of his life. His sons were playing with small wooden blocks and toys he had made from scrap wood. Just little things he'd throw together from leftover pieces to keep them entertained because he couldn't afford to buy them real toys. Simple cars, animals, blocks, nothing fancy, but they loved them. They played with these simple wooden toys for hours, creating games, building things, using their imagination. That's when it clicked for Ole. If his sons loved these toys, maybe other kids would too. Maybe there was a business here, a small one, but something. Something that could keep the workshop running and food on the table. So in 1932, in the middle of the Great Depression, When everyone else was cutting back and playing it safe and just trying to survive, Ole Kirk Christiansen decided to start making wooden toys. His family thought he was crazy. His brothers told him to be realistic. His friends told him to get a real job, maybe in a factory in the city. Banks wouldn't lend him money for such a ridiculous idea. Toys? During a depression when people can. Barely afford food? Who's going to buy toys? Kids can play with sticks and rocks for free. But Ole didn't care what anyone thought. He knew what he'd seen. He knew kids needed to play, maybe especially during hard times. Play was important. It helped kids learn, develop, imagine a better world. And parents, even poor parents, would scrape together a few coins to see their children smile. So he started small. Wooden cars, wooden animals, pool toys, yo-yos, building blocks. He made them in the same workshop where he used to build furniture and houses. He used the same tools, the same skills, just applied to something different. His sons helped paint them with whatever colors they could find or afford. Every spare moment went into creating these toys. Ole would work on custom carpentry jobs during the day to pay the bills, then spend his evenings and nights making toys. The first toys were rough, simple, but they were well made because Ole didn't know how to make anything poorly. Even a toy car got the same attention to detail as a piece of furniture. The wheels turned smoothly, the paint was even. The edges were sanded perfectly so no child would get a splinter. Quality mattered to Ole. It always had. In 1934, he needed a name for his toy company. He wanted something short, something catchy, something that meant something important. He sat at his workbench one night, exhausted, trying to think of names. He thought about what toys were for. They were for playing, for having fun, for learning through play. In Danish, there's a phrase, "leg godt." It means play well. Ole liked the sound of it. He shortened it, combined the words. Lego, he didn't know it at the time, but leg godt in Latin also means I put together. The perfect accidental meaning for what Lego would eventually become. But that was decades away. In 1934, it was just a name for a small toy company run by a widowed carpenter trying to keep his family fed. The early years of Lego were hard, really hard. The toys sold okay locally, but not enough to make real money. Ole would travel to nearby towns with a suitcase full of toys, going door to door, trying to convince shop owners to stock his products. Most said no. Some said yes, but barely sold any. All made just enough to keep going, but not enough to thrive. But here's the thing. The toys were good. Kids who got them loved them. Parents noticed their quality. Slowly, word spread. Not fast, but steady. A shop in one town would order a few toys, then a few more. Then another shop would hear about them. It was slow growth, painfully slow, but it was growth. Then World War II started. Denmark was occupied by Germany in April 1940. Soldiers in the streets, rationing, curfews, fear, resources became scarce. Wood became expensive and hard to get because it was being used for the war effort. Ole's toy business was on the verge of collapse again. He couldn't get materials. He couldn't ship products easily. Everything was rationed and controlled, but Ole found ways to adapt. He made toys from whatever wood he could find. He simplified designs to use less material. He focused on smaller items that used less resources. His sons, now teenagers, helped run the business, while Ole dealt with the constant challenge of keeping the workshop operating under occupation. It was stressful. It was scary. But they survived. During the war years, something interesting happened. With so few goods available, toys became more valuable. Parents who could afford them wanted to give their children something to be happy about, some escape from the fear and uncertainty. Lego toys, well-made and durable, became sought after. Ole still couldn't produce enough to meet demand because of material shortages, but the demand was there. That gave him hope for after the war. When the war ended in 1945, Ole was ready to expand. He'd survived another disaster. Now he wanted to grow, but there was a problem. Wood was still expensive, still somewhat scarce as Europe rebuilt. He needed an alternative material, something cheaper, more available, more versatile. Then he learned about plastic, specifically a plastic injection molding machine. It was new technology. Most toy makers were skeptical. Plastic was seen as cheap, flimsy, inferior to wood. It didn't have the warmth, the feel, the quality of wood. But Ole saw potential. Plastic could be molded into any shape. It could be any color. It was consistent, every piece identical. It was lighter, making shipping cheaper. And it was fast. A wooden toy took hours to make. A plastic toy could be made in minutes. In 1947, Ole became one of the first toy manufacturers in Denmark to buy a plastic injection molding machine. It cost a fortune. 30,000 Danish kroner, which today would be close to $200,000. Money he didn't really have. He had to take out loans again. His sons thought he was making another crazy bet. But Ole believed in it. Now he could make plastic toys. Small cars, teddy bears, rattles, blocks. They sold okay. Not great, but okay. Parents were still skeptical of plastic. But kids didn't care what material their toys were made from. They just wanted to play. Ole was still searching for that one big idea though. That breakthrough product that would take Lego to the next level. He'd built a solid small business, but he wanted more. Not for ego or greed, but because he believed toys mattered. They mattered for children's development. They mattered for families. They mattered for society. Good toys taught kids to think, to create, to solve problems. Ole wanted to make toys that did that. Then, in 1949, Ole came across something interesting at a toy fair. A British company called Kiddicraft had created self-locking building bricks made of plastic. Simple rectangular blocks that could snap together and be pulled apart. They were called Kiddicraft self-locking bricks. The inventor was a man named Hilary Page, and he'd patented them in 1939, but hadn't been able to market them effectively because of the war. Ole looked at these bricks and saw something nobody else did. He saw infinite possibility. He saw a toy that could be anything a child imagined. Not just a car or a house, but a system. A way to build and rebuild endlessly. The same bricks could be a castle today, a spaceship tomorrow, a farm the day after. Limited only by imagination, so he bought the rights to produce similar bricks in Denmark. He called them automatic binding bricks. The name wasn't great, but the concept was solid. They were simple. Just rectangular plastic blocks with studs on top and hollow bottoms. You could stack them, connect them, build basic structures. Kids liked them, but they had a problem. A big problem. They didn't hold together very well. The connection was weak. Buildings would fall apart if you picked them up. Towers would collapse if you breathed on them. It was frustrating. Ole and his son Gottfried, who was now working full-time in the business and showing real talent for design and innovation, spent years trying to fix this problem. They experimented with different designs, different plastics, different stud configurations, different spacing. They tested hundreds of variations. They built prototypes. They had kids test them. Nothing worked perfectly. The bricks either held too loosely and fell apart, or held too tightly, and kids couldn't pull them apart without hurting their fingers. This went on for years. 1950, 1951, 1952, 1953. They kept selling the imperfect bricks because they sold okay, but Ole and Gottfried knew they weren't good enough. They knew the idea was brilliant, but the execution was flawed. They needed a breakthrough. Then, in 1958, Gottfried had it. He'd been obsessing over the problem for weeks, sketching designs, doing math, testing clutch power. And he figured it out. He added tubes inside the bottom of each brick. 3 tubes arranged in a specific pattern that would grip the studs from below. This created a clutch power that was strong enough to hold bricks together, firmly, but still allowed kids to pull them apart easily. It was perfect. The bricks clicked together with a satisfying snap. They held together when you built with them. But kids could still take them apart and rebuild something new. This is the patent that changed everything. The one that was allegedly sketched out on whatever paper was available, including the legend of toilet paper. Now, whether Gottfried literally drew it on toilet paper is debated. Some say yes. He was in the bathroom when inspiration struck and he grabbed what was available. Others say it's just a colorful story that got added later. But the truth doesn't really matter. The point is this: the patent was filed quickly, simply, without fancy presentations or corporate boards or consultant reviews. Just a working father and son solving a problem in their workshop, documenting their solution and filing the paperwork. On January 28, 1958, the Lego brick as we know it today was patented. Danish patent number 92683. The design was so good, so fundamentally perfect, that it hasn't changed since. Every Lego brick made since 1958 is compatible with every brick made today. Think about that. A brick from 1958 will click perfectly into a brick made in 2025. That's 67 years of backward compatibility. No other toy company can claim that. No other product in any industry can really claim that. Imagine if your 1958 car parts fit perfectly into a 2025 model. It's absurd. But that's Ole Kirk Christiansen died in March 1958, just weeks after the patent was filed. He was 66 years old. He'd been in poor health for a while, worn down by decades of hard work and stress. But he died knowing his life's work had finally achieved something special. He died knowing the brick was perfect. He saw his invention succeed, but he didn't live to see it become a global empire. He didn't see Lego become a cultural phenomenon. He didn't see his bricks go to space, appear in movies, become one of the most recognizable brands on Earth. But his legacy lived on through Gottfried, and Gottfried had big plans. He took over the company officially and immediately focused on one key idea: the Lego system of play. Not just random bricks, but sets with themes and purposes. He created town sets, castle sets, space sets, vehicle sets. Each set could be built according to instructions, but then could be combined with any other set. The possibilities were truly endless. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, Lego grew steadily. They opened factories in Switzerland, then Germany, then other countries. They created new colors, new specialty pieces, new themes. In 1968, they built Legoland, a theme park entirely made of Lego bricks. It opened in Billund, in that same tiny village where Ole had started his carpentry shop 52 years earlier. The village that was barely on any map now had one of the most visited attractions in Denmark. Millions of people came every year just to see what could be built with Lego bricks. The company stayed innovative. In 1969, they created Duplo, larger bricks for younger children. In 1977, they introduced Technic, sets with gears and motors for older kids interested in engineering. In 1978, they created minifigures, those little yellow people that became iconic. Each innovation built on the core system. Everything was compatible, everything connected. By the 1980s, Lego was a massive company. They had factories on multiple continents. They sold in over 100 countries. They were producing billions of bricks every year. The Christiansen family was wealthy beyond Ole's wildest dreams. But they stayed private, stayed focused on quality. They remembered Ole's motto, "Only the best is good enough." But then the 1990s happened, and Lego almost died. Video games exploded. PlayStation, Nintendo 64, later Xbox. Suddenly kids wanted digital entertainment, not physical toys. They wanted Pikachu and Mario, not plastic bricks. Lego's sales started to decline. Not collapse, but decline. Steady, worrying decline. Lego panicked. They tried to diversify. They opened more theme parks. They made video games. They launched clothing lines. They made watches. They opened Lego-branded stores. They created more and more licensed sets: Star Wars, Harry Potter, Batman. They made sets more complex, more specialized. They moved away from simple bricks towards specific pieces that only worked for one purpose. They lost focus on what made them special: the bricks, the system, the compatibility. They forgot Ole's principles. By 2003, Lego was losing money. A lot of money. Almost $1 billion in debt. The company that had survived the Great Depression, World War II, and countless competitors was about to collapse because it forgot its own identity. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. The family was considering selling, but then they did something smart. They brought in new leadership that understood what Lego really was. They went back to basics. They focused on the bricks. They reduced the number of unique pieces. They listened to their adult fans, the AFOL community, adult fans of Lego. These were grown adults spending thousands of dollars on Lego sets, building massive creations, forming clubs. Lego realized these fans were their most passionate advocates. So they started designing sets for them. More complex, more detailed, more challenging. They also embraced their licensed partnerships better. Instead of just slapping brands on random sets, they made truly great Star Wars sets, amazing Harry Potter sets, incredible Marvel sets. They made sets that fans of those franchises actually wanted. They made the Lego Movie in 2014. It was a huge gamble. A movie about toys? Everyone expected it to flop. It made almost $500 million and was genuinely good. It reminded people why Lego mattered. It celebrated creativity and imagination. The turnaround was remarkable. By 2015, Lego was the world's most valuable toy company, surpassing Mattel. Today, the Lego Group is worth over $50 billion. They sell billions of bricks every year to over 140 countries. They've made multiple movies, countless video games, theme parks on multiple continents, robotics programs in schools, architectural sets for adults, art sets, engineering sets. Lego is no longer just a toy. It's a cultural institution, and it all goes back to that patent filed in 1958. That simple design with 8 studs on top and 3 tubes underneath. That design allegedly sketched on toilet paper by a Danish carpenter's son who refused to accept imperfection. That design worth $50 billion.